Good morning, you guys. It's your boy Bill Mahari here, represent Mahari Nation Sports Podcast. Much love to the entire LDBC and the entire basketball community. If you want more basketball content, tune in to Basketball Conversations every Friday night, 9 p.m. Central Time. Is where we discuss basketball-related topics, news, debates, and everything else in the world of basketball. All right. So this is another episode of Morning Historical Perspective. Just like I said, if you want to do any of these videos of your requests, just go ahead and link up in the comment section. Okay. So I'm going to be talking about one of my favorite game-winning shots in playoff history, and this was a little bit personal for me because it was the first game-winning shot that I have seen in the playoffs as a kid. And I'm talking about the game-winning shot that John Stockton had in the 1997 Western Conference Finals. All right. Now, to give you some background and some details about that, okay? This was the Western Conference Finals against the Utah Jazz and the Houston Rockets, okay? And throughout the 90s, the Utah Jazz have had some deep runs into the postseason and some flameouts, okay? Now they did reach the Western Conference Finals back in 1992 when they ran into the Portland Trail Blazers, okay? And then they flamed out in 93 when they lost in the first round to the Seattle Supersonics. Then in 94, they were a 4 seed, but they made it their way to the Western Conference Finals where they met the Houston Rockets, in which the Rockets by that time were the best team in the NBA that year, led by their MVP and Defensive Player of the Year winner, Akeem Olajuwon, and the Rockets made quick work of them in 5 games, okay? Then in 95, okay, they were the third best team in the NBA that year that won 60, was it 60 or 61 regular season games between the two. And they were one of the favorites to come out of the West that year. And they went up against the Rockets, who were basically the 6th seed and were pretty much struggling throughout the regular season. And the Rockets miraculously beat them in 5 games en route to their second straight NBA championship. Now, by 96, the Jazz won 55 regular season games and made it another run to the Western Conference Finals. That year, the John Stockton, their point guard, was pretty much injured little. He had a bad left leg, he had a bruised left arm, and was not at 100%. But he battled through and pushed the Seattle Supersonics to 7 games. All right, despite the missed free throws by Karl Malone down the stretch, the Jazz were very confident in coming back. Because remember, if they would have lost in 5 games, it would have been another flameout. But the fact that they were able to come back from a 3-1 deficit to force a 7 gave them some building confidence heading into 96-97. That year, the Jazz had their best season in franchise history. They won 64 regular season games. You understand what I'm saying? They only lost only 2 home games that entire year, okay? And they made it all the way to Western Conference Finals where they ran into the same old Houston Rockets. By that time, the Rockets had reconstructed the team after their championship years. Then this time the team was led by Akeem and Drexler, and this time they added Charles Barkley. All right? And both these two teams were expected to defeat each other in the Western Conference Finals, and they were. So the series did not disappoint, but also had a lot of drama to it. Okay, and so during that entire series, the Rockets lost the first 2 games in the Delta Center. Okay, now you got to remember the Rockets were basically coming back. Basically, were going through a tough 7-game series against their rival, the Seattle Supersonics, where the Rockets held a 3-1 lead, but then Seattle came back to force a 7. But despite winning the 7th game on their home court, the Rockets were pretty much a little bit of a worn out team by playing all those extra games, and it kind of showed in the first 2 games. But then as the series shifted back to the Summit in Houston, Texas, basically bench reserve player Eddie Johnson, who was a fabulous scorer of his time, okay, pretty much gave the Rockets a spark they needed. He scored 31 points off the bench in Game 3, and then hit one of the greatest game-winning shots in NBA history, in which the here's how it went in Game 4. Okay, the play was designed for Drexler to go one-on-one on the left side of the court, but the Jazz read the play all the way, and then they swung the ball, and then they kicked it to an open Eddie Johnson, open at the top of the key, and made a high arcing 3-pointer that went right down the net. and the whole crowd in Houston, Texas went wild. And so with that shot, it gave the Rockets some momentum, and they tied the series up at 2 games apiece. Then in game five, the Rockets, battled hard, but their top artillery shooters of Mario Ellie, uh, Clyde Drexler, and Eddie Johnson, they went a combined 0 for 18 from 3-point range in that game. Without, the shooting of their then rookie Matt Maloney, who went 5 of 7 from 3-point range, it would have been a blowout. But instead, the Jazz squeaked by with a 5-point victory, and they forced the series, and they went back for game 6. Now, it's a little bit of backstory on this, okay? The Jazz, by that time, they were one victory away from making their first ever trip to the NBA Finals. For John Stockton and Karl Malone, they came into the NBA in 1986. They went through wars in the West. The Showtime Lakers, the Blazers, okay? Then the Rockets, okay? The Sonics. They went through pitfalls and roadblocks along the way. And now they were just a victory away from advancing to their first ever NBA Finals. Okay. And I remember that fourth quarter when Drexler went off for 26 points, including 2 big 3-pointers that gave them basically a 7-point lead with about 4.5 minutes to go in the game. Okay. And then John Stockton personally kept the Utah Jazz in the game by scoring 15 in the fourth quarter in that entire stretch. Okay, he basically was the offense that kept the Jazz in the game. Okay, and he was making difficult runners. He was making 3-point shots. He was pretty much orchestrating, the whole Jazz offense as he normally does. That's what great players do on an everyday basis. Okay, then you get down to the final possession after the Rockets, unfortunately did not score on their end. Okay, with 2.8 seconds left to go. Okay, they basically called stack. Okay, stack was basically a split play where you basically can split or use a screen for the third guy on the line to set up for the guard to get an open look. Okay, now here's how it went down. Okay, Byron Russell inbounded the ball. Okay, and basically it was Malone, Hornacek, Stockton, and I think and also Antoine Carr. Okay, they were their best shooters on the floor at that particular point. Okay, now when the play developed, John Stockton broke through the line and received the inbound pass, but there was some confusion. Drexler thought that there should have been a switch. All right, because the signed defender Sadale's 3 was supposed to take care of the point guard inbound, take care of the point guard receiving the inbound pass. But John Stockton had a clean, inbound catch. Then all he had to do was turn, take one dribble, and pull up for the 3-point shot. Now, because of that confusion that the Rockets had, okay, because of that confusion, John Stockton is wide open for the 3-point shot, and Barkley sees that, and he had to quickly rotate to an open Stockton and then basically try to contest or block the shot. But it was too late. Stockton was wide open. He had a clean look. All he had to do was catch the ball, take one dribble to his left, pull up, and hit and shoot the ball. And that's what he did. He pulled up, took the shot, and the shot went right down the net. I remembered it watching it as a 5-year-old, and just seeing that elation of the Jazz. Finally, they after what almost a decade in the entirely a decade in the NBA, they finally made the NBA Finals after so many years of just heartbreaking, you know, defeats, unexpected flameouts in the postseason. You know, the one thing that really surprised me was the emotion that came out of John Stockton, because as most of you guys know the game of basketball, John Stockton was a stoic person. He doesn't show emotion. He doesn't show that much in terms of the theatrics or just the intensity of it. He's basically a quiet, reserved, stoic person. But when he hit the shot, and when the shot went right down the net, he immediately jumped like additional 10 feet in the air, just like in excitement as the rest of the team came to him in celebration, and they did it. Finally, after 12 years of just heartbreak and frustration, they finally made the NBA Finals. And unfortunately for Charles Barkley, because I felt a little bit bad for Barkley in this sense, Barkley was traded from Phoenix to Houston for the sole purpose of winning a championship. He recognized that his time of winning a championship was slowly running out, and Houston was perhaps their last best chance of grabbing that elusive ring that basically denied his entire career. And when the shot went down, I remembered Barkley, in the tunnel with the defeated look in his eyes, and basically recognizing that that was perhaps the last chance to grab that NBA championship, and it was denied right there when John Stockton nailed that game-winning shot. Little did he realize it, and so just the emotion from Malone, from Stockton, from Jerry Sloan. I mean, it was emotion that you never see from the Jazz. And when that shot went in, it unleashed Jazz fever all over the state of Utah. It's kind of sad though because that Jazz team was very much a well coached, well disciplined team, and because of those roadblocks along the way against Michael Jordan and the Bulls, they never achieved winning an NBA championship. But on that night, on that Thursday night, they basically celebrated as if they won a championship. And I feel for Stockton because Stockton, regardless of what you think of John Stockton, okay, there have been a lot of people that say that John Stockton was a dirty player, he played physical, whatever. But regardless of what you guys think of him, okay, Stockton played every single game and he never left anything on the floor. He put his heart and soul every single day that he played and he never backed down from the challenge. Okay. And on that day, on May 29th of 1997, I mean, it didn't solidify John Stockton as a Hall of Famer in many people's eyes. That shot did it for his legacy. And for me, just watching that elation, it got me so excited. And then I remember for almost a week, I tried to duplicate that same play, that same jump shot set. You know what I'm saying? But it was a great feeling. It was a great, exhilarating moment for the Jazz to finally make it to the NBA Finals. And to this day, they have not reached the NBA Finals since. They made the conference finals back in 2007, but they haven't made it beyond that since. So, it's one of those great, memories that I'm sure a lot of Utah fans will forever be grateful for. And thankfully, I have the John Stockton jersey in my house. So anytime I wanted to see a old Utah Jazz game, I would put that on and just basically cheer them like it was basically back in the '90s too. But yeah, that shot was a really great moment for him in his career and for the growth of the Utah Jazz as a franchise. You know, after years of being denied of reaching the finals, and two of those occasions were at the hands of the Houston Rockets that went on to win championships. They finally knocked their arch nemesis, and they finally stamped their ticket to the NBA Finals. You know what I'm saying? And unfortunately, they ran into you know the god of basketball, Michael Jordan, in the '90s, and they lost back-to-back heartbreaking NBA Finals series that went down to the wire. And so, if any of those outcomes of those games would have changed, I don't know, who knows? The Jazz may would have won one or two championships during that period. But that's what happens when you go up against great players. A lot of times, you have a great team with great players, but you go up against another team with another great player, and they just deny your opportunity of your shining moment of a championship. And that's what happened in both '97 and in '98. But that moment on that Thursday, I mean, it was a great moment for the Jazz. It was a great moment for basketball, and something that I always will treasure as a basketball historian because I love watching game-winning shots with a lot of emotion and a lot of context behind the shot. And so that's one of my favorite shots in NBA history. And I hope that you guys understand how big the moment was during that time and for the careers of both John Stockton and Karl Malone. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section.